Hi, Right Riders, Cruz here. Thank you so much for joining me. In this video, we are going to be looking at the GED Science portion of the science sample test here, thanks to the state of Texas for providing some GED practice. I will share the link so you are able to have some practice, free practice for the GED. I'm going to go ahead and click on the GED Start tab here, and we're in the science section of the GED. And now we're going to look at the questions, just some examples of the sample questions. There are 10 on this particular or in this particular practice test. Okay, first you see here a map, obviously, or a visual map of geographical map. And we have a legend here located in the bottom right. And this map is from the United States Geological Survey. So it says, which conclusion can be reached from the information on the map? As soon as I see the word conclusion, when I see what can be concluded, what can be inferred, how can we analyze this information, the the question is encouraging you to again analyze what you're seeing. The yellow circles do represent active volcanoes. That's not a conclusion that can be reached based on what you're actually seeing. So be careful with these kinds of questions. You have to infer based on the information. The next question has an energy pyramid here. We're actually, encouraged to look at how this is set up and the flow, meaning either from top to bottom or from bottom to top. And so we are really looking at the information that's given, and it says which statement correctly describes the flow. So when I see words like this, that's letting me know that it does not require analysis. This type of question is really looking at, are you able to read the information that is directly stated, or what could be said explicitly stated in the graph or in this diagram, as they call it here? Now, some of you may look at this and go, oh, no, if you don't remember chemistry class and you cannot remember what these abbreviations stand for these elements, that's not the question. The question is, which conclusion is supported by the data in the graph? So again, we see a key word here, conclusion. What can be concluded based on what you're seeing in the graph itself? And we're looking at the solubility of different salts at different temperatures. And you look at this information and you're like, well, what can I conclude based on this graph? So again, you're less looking at what the elements are, and more looking at, really you're looking at the colors of the graph, understanding solubility, salt solubility at various temperatures, and understanding that, your X and Y axis. And here we have temperatures in degrees Celsius. So that's really what the question is asking you. They're not asking you to remember what the elements are, on a periodic table. This next question is the science-based question where you have to respond with a writing um, response. And so we will do this particular response in a separate video, only because it says this task may require approximately 10 minutes to complete. And so I'd like to move on to the next question, but I can tell you that we will be reading this particular passage and then responding to it in 10 minutes. Next question, multiple choice question. This is the same passage, same page 1 and page 2. In this case, it's asking you the following: which fact from the passage supports the argument that parasitic fungi offer, at best, severely limited potential as insecticides that target many kinds of insects? So, this is a right there question, right, writers? So, right there meaning that the answer is located in this text. So, you're going to find the answer either on page 1 or on page 2, because it states which fact from the passage. But then the second part is So now you know, okay, the answer's in the passage, but you have to find the fact that supports the argument, supports the idea that parasitic fungi offer, at best, severely limited potential as insecticides that target many kinds of insects. So, it's a little bit of a two-part question, but they're saying it's in there, but you got to find it. So, just be careful with those kinds of questions. The next one is showing data in this case. And again, notice how we're really reading graphs and charts and information. So here, this question is asking you which statement describes the pattern established in the data or in the data included in this chart. Here we have notice this describes the pattern. And so describing the pattern then is focused more on seeing trends that are happening in the graph. So when you have questions like this describing the pattern, just remember, right, writers, the pattern may be focused again going vertically or going horizontally. So be able to focus on different patterns, again, going both vertically and horizontally. Moving on to question number 7. This diagram, it's maybe a flashback for a lot of you on biology. So in this case, this diagram shows an event that occurs during meiosis. And looking at the question it asks, what is the result of this event? So you're looking at paternal, maternal, this crossing that happens, this crossing over, and then you are asked for what is the result of this event. So it's really looking at this is a cause and effect question. So watch out for those. Again, understanding what the question is asking you. Next question. We have another passage based question with a 2-page passage. Scientists infer from the investigation that fish raised in water with higher levels of acidity have difficulty hearing predatory sounds. So, which excerpt from the text supports this inference? So, you've got to find the text evidence that demonstrates that fish raised in water with higher levels of acidity have difficulty hearing predatory sounds. So you're looking for, again, the text evidence that supports this idea. I love these kinds of questions, to be honest, right, writers, because you're not the one having to do the inferring. Instead, you're just supporting the inference based on the information that you're given. Question number 9 focuses on the idea of identify the independent and dependent variable in the investigation. So here, you're going to have to understand the difference between independent variables and dependent variables. And definitely that's a science based question of just thinking about, well, wait, so independent, what does that mean? Something is independent of an event, but when it's dependent, it depends on an event to happen in order for that to occur. So it can be a little bit confusing because again, something independent is occurring sort of on its own versus something dependent that it relies on something else before it can happen. Last question. Again, we have this chart and we have data and it's looking at volumetric bone density for 4 samples. And this one is interesting because it's saying what is the average bone density for the data samples provided. Really, what you're having to do is calculate that. So, how do you calculate average? So, if it's asking for the average bone density, you're not just taking all of these and saying, oh, okay, well, I'm just taking 6.8, 1.7, 3.6, and 5.2. I'm adding these together and then I'm dividing by 4. Well, that's going to give you the average of the mass of samples in grams. And then you might be saying, well, then I'll just take this one and I'll take 22.6, 5.4, 11.3, 17.4, and then I'll divide it by 4. No, because then you're going to get the volume of samples. Be very careful with these kinds of questions where you just go with one answer choice and you immediately jump to it, or even if you went across, and went horizontally and said, okay, well, 6.8 divided by 22.6. Well, that's the bone density for sample one. And this would be the bone density 1.7 divided by 5.4 would be the bone density for sample two. So watch out for those kinds of questions where you feel like you're just able to determine the answer very quickly. Pause and really take a look at the question so that you are not just jumping to conclusions far too quickly. Thank you so much, Right Riders, for watching this video. And I hope that this reviewing this science section ensures your success. Stay tuned for more videos on the writing sections for the GED, both the short response question in the science portion and also the English section for the writing. All right, Right Riders, cruise out. Have a great rest of your week and love you guys. And thank you so much for subscribing. Bye bye.